Welcome to the January 18th, 2017 meeting of the Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission. We'll start by standing and reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. We'll start our meeting tonight by taking roll call. Mrs. Zamorano, you please take the roll.
Commissioner Gregory?
Here.
Vice Chair Simpson?
Here.
Chair Reeder?
Here.
Chair Engler is absent and Chair Lemo is currently not present.
Thank you. We'll begin with public comments. Ms. Zamorano, do you want to describe the procedure that we follow to have public comments?
This is a time and place for public comments. A speaker card is available for those wishing to address the Traffic Commission regarding items on the agenda or on a subject within the city's jurisdiction. Speakers for specific agenda items shall be called and heard during that agenda item. All remarks should be addressed to the Traffic Commission as a whole, and all documents for the Commission and the official record should be presented to the recording secretary prior to speaking. Speakers are requested to state their name and community of residence for the record. Under state law, public comment matters may not be acted upon by the Traffic Commission unless listed on the agenda, but may be referred to the city engineer for administrative follow-up. As comments can only be recorded while speaking into the microphone, please refrain from addressing the commissioners unless you're at the podium. If you're unable to come to the podium or should you need to step away while speaking, a wireless microphone is available for your convenience. Pursuant to Traffic Commission standards, public comment speakers are allowed 3 minutes. The yellow card is displayed when you have 1 minute remaining. And also, please silence all cell phones during the meeting. And currently, we have no public speaker comment cards.
Thank you. We'll move on then to summary notes. Are there any questions from the commissioners? Any comments? None? Thank you. Our first report tonight will be from Mr. Sweeting, an engineering report. This is an action item on which we will take a vote at the conclusion of the report in our discussions. And Mr. Sweeting, please.
Welcome, Chair Reeder. Thank you, Commissioners. This presentation is an update regarding flashing yellow arrows. Just a little bit of background information. Back in January, we went to City Council to get approval for the installation of flashing yellow arrows at 5 locations and to set standards for those locations. Material was ordered in February that was needed to complete the installation of the flashing yellow arrows. In March, we started public outreach, beginning with an animation that's up in the upper right-hand corner of the diagram that was posted on the city website and TOTV on how flashing yellow arrows work. Then we followed that and we did an interview on TV, on TOTV, as Talk of the Town, also explaining how they work and why we were installing them. And lastly, we handed out brochures to multiple agencies throughout Thousand Oaks. In May, we installed 3 flashing yellow arrows at the intersections of Thousand Oaks Boulevard and Dallas Drive, Moore Park and the Thousand Oaks High School driveway, Hillcrest and Marin Street. Currently, the city is in the process of undergrounding utilities on Thousand Oaks Boulevard, east of Duesenberg. So that particular intersection was placed on hold until December of 2016, which it was installed. So there are now flashing yellow arrows at Duesenberg. And lastly, the 5th intersection, Thousand Oaks Boulevard and Rancho Road, required a new cabinet. But that cabinet has now arrived, and we are ready to install that shortly. And at that time, we will also implement the flashing yellow arrows at that location. With the installation of the flashing yellow arrows, we help to identify them by placing advance warning signs with orange flags in advance of the intersection. In addition, we also had one on the mast arm next to the signal head to inform the drivers to yield on flashing yellow arrow. To date, there have been no collisions regarding flashing yellow arrows at any of the 4 intersections. There has been an increase in left turn volumes, yet the delays and queues have been reduced. There have been no negative comments, and there has been a request for more flashing yellow arrows throughout the city. This is a bar graph of the increased left turn volume. In red is the before, in blue is the after. So you can see from the bar graph that all the volumes at all 4 intersections have increased. Similarly, this is another bar graph showing the maximum delay of any single vehicle over the course of an hour. Showing the worst location, which was Duesenberg and Thousand Oaks Boulevard. In red is the before, had a maximum wait time of 122 seconds for the single most car. After the flashing yellows were implemented, that was reduced by 59 seconds down to 63, which you can see in the blue bar. This is another delay. This is an average delay for all vehicles. And again, you can see in the red is the before. And again, at Thousand Oaks Boulevard and Duesenberg, which is the 3rd set of data lines. The before was 51 seconds for the average of all vehicles. And that has been reduced by 35 seconds to an average of 16 seconds. And lastly, another benchmark is the before and after the number of cars that are in a stack. Those were all reduced by about 2 vehicles per stack over the course of an hour. So as stated before, the City Council adopted standards for the implementations of flashing yellow arrows. That's in your attachment, in your packet, attachment number 1. Utilizing those factors contributed to the success of the initial implementation of the flashing yellow arrow. Some of those standards are sight distance, collision history, and installing on roads with speed limits of 45 miles per hour or less. Utilizing those same basic core group of standards, we have identified 7 additional locations to implement flashing yellow arrows, as it is shown there on your screen. These locations are kind of, quote, ready to go, because they have very minimal work and minimal material that is needed to implement the flashing yellow arrows at a cost of about $6,000 per intersection. There is an approved budget. Also, in your packet of attachment number 3 were about 50 plus other locations that were identified that have similar characteristics to implement future flashing yellow arrows. However, some of those locations do require additional materials and additional costs to implement the flashing yellow arrows. So that's why we chose these 7 locations. And in red here were the first 5 to be implemented of the flashing yellow arrows. The circles in black are the 7 proposed locations. That is also in your packet as attachment number 2. And staff recommendations are in your staff report. And this concludes the presentations, and staff is ready to take your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sweeting. In choosing 7 locations for 2017, is that due to budget restrictions? Or why not choose 8?
Yeah, we felt that was a good number to do as far as the to go a little more than we did before with 5 and with budget. Yes, to keep that under $50,000.
Yeah, probably a good idea just to ramp it up slowly. Thank you.
So overall in the city, how many of the newer stoplights do we have that, at least potentially in the future, can be upgraded at this relatively inexpensive $6,000 cost?
I'd have to look at that, but probably almost any of the signals that we have installed in the last 10 years, the cabinets are most likely ready to go. But without looking at each individual one, that's hard to tell. But we probably got maybe another 5 or 6 that we could potentially do without upgrading additional materials. And it's not just the materials from there, it's also mast arms. If they don't go over the center of the left turn lane, then we need brand new mast arms, which is quite expensive.
Yeah, I noticed $40,000 to $75,000 price tag on some of these. So,
well, yeah, that's because the cabinets are about 25 to 30,000, and each pole would be somewhere around 20,000, depending on the type and wear and installation.
So as we retire older ones, we would, if we adopt this more and more, we would obviously plan budgetarily to make this an inexpensive item to add in the future, correct?
That would be correct, provided it also meets some of the other standards that we've set, such as there's no dual left turns, sight distance is adequate, all the other conditions and standards that we've set, yes.
Right, that's great. And I'd just like to tell everybody that this was a project first brought forth by our Chairman Reeder, that suggested that we evaluate this, and so far it's been very successful, so we have him to thank to date for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Ms. Simpson, you have any comment?
Just overall, what's the annual city budget on lights and expenditures relative to the equipment?
As far as like the maintenance?
Is there earmarked maintenance or like a reserve fund for?
Well, for maintenance for daily calls in every day, it's about $200,000.
Okay.
On the capital side, we have a couple different budgets. For the traffic signal modifications, we have $50,000 a year.
So this project and this estimated 7 takes that.
Correct.
The scope of that.
Correct, and that's where
funds.
Yes, that is correct. And we have a specific CI 5259. That's $50,000 a year.
Any others? This may be out of sequence, but we have some future things going on the corner of Village Glen and Agura Road, where we're going to install a protected left turn arrow. Would you consider FYI there, since the cabinet needs to be replaced anyway?
Yeah, that's something we can consider in the future, but we'd like to bring that back if that's something the commission would desire, because we did have public speakers at that, and that was a couple years ago before we started implementation, and we would have to look at, again, all those standards from collisions to the speeds to everything to make sure that it's an adequate application there.
Okay, I understand it needs to be an agenda item at a future meeting then. Thank you. All right. Ms. Zambrano?
We currently have no speaker cards for this item.
All right, thank you. All right. Item.
Oh, excuse me, Chair Reader.
Yes.
We're going to have to. This is an action item, so we are going to have to take a vote on this.
I'm out to lunch tonight.
So I can make.
All right. Do we have a motion then?
Sure. I'd like to make a motion to follow staff recommendation in the conversion of protected left turn and traffic indications to flashing yellow. The lights, the 7 lights that have been proposed in this report.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Ms. Zambrano, take the vote.
All those in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries 3-0.
Thank you. Our next item of business tonight is another engineer's report. given to us by Mr. Machiko, traffic engineer. The subject is intersection of Avenida de las Sarboles and Big Sky Drive traffic control. Mr. Machiko?
Yes, thank you, Chair Reader. This is a recommendation for traffic control improvements at the intersection of Avenida de las Sarboles and Big Sky Drive. Here's a vicinity map showing the western end of Avenida de las Sarboles. At Big Sky, it's located west of Lynn Road, and Wildwood Park is accessed from this intersection. Here we have an enlarged view of the location. Last year, in 2016, we had 3 reported collisions that occurred here. In each of the 3 incidents, a driver that was going westbound failed to make the right turn from Sarboles onto Big Sky Drive. They subsequently struck a wall at 940 Bright Star Circle. That's the corner house there. And in each of the incidents, the drivers reported to be driving under the influence, and they all occurred at night. Prior to the 3 collisions that occurred last year, we took a look at collision records, and we found that there were 2 additional incidents, very similar in type of collisions, during the 4 prior years. One was a DUI, and it was a similar nighttime event. The residents at 940 Bright Star Circle is requesting the city install some type of protection against similar incidents in the future. And we believe that the recommended improvements in the staff report will bring more attention to the turn from Sarboles onto Big Sky Drive. We're open to input from the Traffic Commission as well as the public on the recommended improvements. Here's a photograph showing the westbound view of the warning signs that were in place last year, as well as we have a centerline striping in the road that guides motorists through that turn. And here the picture shows 3 chevron signs through the turn. This photograph is what's out there today. This photograph was taken at night. You can see that there's a K-rail mounted on it, are chevron signs as well as red markers, and you can see the reflectivity of the signs at night. Now, our primary objective here is to basically make the right turn more obvious to drivers, and our improvement plan aims to improve the signage and striping to better channel the right turns from Sarboles into Big Sky, as well as the left turns from Sarboles into Wildwood Park. We're also aiming to improve the visibility of traffic control at night. So among the set of recommended improvements, here's a sort of a concept that shows a large curve warning ahead sign that would be added to the center median. This size of the sign would be about 4 feet by 4 feet. Most of our advanced warning signs, there's a pair of similar signs ahead. Those are 30-inch by 30-inch. We would also upgrade those signs to a larger sign, about 36 by 36. All proposed signs for the road improvements for this particular location, we would use the highest level of reflective sheeting material for the signs so that they catch the attention of the westbound drivers, especially at night. Here's another concept of what we're looking at or proposing right there at the turn from Sarboles into Big Sky. We're proposing a guardrail right behind the sidewalk, as well as another oversized curve warning sign, as well as red end markers. And finally, this plan shows an overhead view of some striping improvements. We're proposing to better channelize and create a separate left turn lane and right turn lane at this particular location, right turn lane into Big Sky and a left turn lane into Wildwood Park. There's a center island that would be between the turn lanes. We're proposing to add a number of reflective markers there so that during the night that area would brighten up even more. The left turn into Wildwood Park, we're proposing a stop sign, and for that right-of-way control, we would have to take that to City Council on a future agenda. All of the recommended improvements for this area can be handled administratively. So with that, the recommendation is in the staff report. If the Commission concurs with the stop sign installation at the entrance to Wildwood Park, we'll place that on an upcoming City Council agenda, and all other items can be handled administratively. So with that, this concludes the presentation. We'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Machiko. I'd like to start with a few questions. I understand, fortunately, there were no fatalities in these accidents.
That's correct.
Okay. And I examined the scene, and the latest accident that it was in December, I believe, there were no skid marks. Is it under the opinion that these vehicles made no attempt to slow down?
That's what it appears, and that's what the police had concluded as well, or at least the reports had concluded.
And of course, we can assume that they were traveling 45 miles an hour or less. All right. Any questions from commissioners?
With the new striping that you've proposed, do you anticipate speeds to be reduced by that measure?
Yeah, I would expect slowing in this area, because what we're proposing to do is create a single lane into two separate lanes, a left turn lane and a right turn lane, larger advanced warning signs, more prominent markings in the road, especially with the reflective pavement markers, as well as with the red markers at the very end where the guardrail is proposed. That should clearly catch the attention of drivers as they approach the western end of the street.
Yes.
Is the current K-rail sufficient to stop a car from crashing through?
It's probably not going to do that. It's sort of set out there at a slight angle, so it may deflect the vehicles towards the park. But I don't think just the way that the K-rail, because it's not cemented into the ground, it's placed on the surface. I don't think the weight of the K-rail would be able to stop a vehicle.
All right. So, as I see this problem, and certainly people that drink, shouldn't be on the street. And I was hit once by a drunk driver myself, who was blind drunk. So, my concern is always you've got to make things. Got to make things larger, I guess, would be my biggest concern. And I like your signage, but I don't like the size of it. So is there a way we can up the signage by, a huge factor? I've seen similar dangerous, like 90-degree curves. And if you put a huge sign up, people are driving up to it, and it's almost like they're driving into a wall if it's, 3 feet, or I don't know what your size limits are. Maybe in a triangle or something that does have the turn arrow. But obviously these people, they were going too fast, first of all. But secondly, they could very well have been blind drunk, which wouldn't have done anything about it. My second concern, besides the signage size, is what can we put there that would stop a car safely? Because I guess we've got two factors. We've got a residence behind who's I've seen pictures here that that I don't think they're going to create a bigger swimming pool to catch the next car that comes, but they've had to in the past. But car is a pretty big thing. Is there anything we can really engineer that would have any effect of slowing it down? I mean, I'd like to protect the person that didn't make the turn also, and I see things like those barrels that we see a lot on the freeways, that are designed to kind of give way and, I don't know, explode or whatever is the right terminology, but certainly to slow down, a vehicle safely. Is there some alternative like that we could incorporate also?
Mr. Machiko, before you answer that question, I'd like to piggyback on Mr. Gregory's idea, because the kinetic energy in a 4,000-pound vehicle moving at 45 miles per hour is tremendous. And I looked up the Federal Highway Administration, calculated that a vehicle traveling just 40 miles an hour of this weight is equivalent, if you stop it in a short distance, it's equivalent to it falling 54 feet or a 5-story building. So I agree with Mr. Gregory that in solving the problem, we don't want to cause a fatality inadvertently by creating such a strong barrier there that consequences are very severe. Can we take a moment to discuss this among ourselves before Mr. Machiko answers that question? Do you have any input?
I just think that's a really good point. Would just be if you could educate us on the difference between the preventative barrels that we see driving through Malibu Canyon versus this other material proposed, and the pros and cons. That would definitely be important.
Yes, a way to divert the energy, perhaps some sort of barrier before the wall, in addition to the wall, to kind of divert the energy to the side. Things of this nature might be considered to where we could come up with more engineering solutions other than just a barrier there with large red triangles on it. And I yield to you, Mr. Machiko, to answer the questions then.
Okay, well, yeah, to come up with a system to absorb the energy of a vehicle that's going straight through, that's a big challenge here, because in terms of the area that we have to work with, it's somewhat limited. Normally when you see those, the barrels, they're usually at the end of an area where you have quite a bit of distance behind it, so as the car travels into the barriers or into the barrels, they're traveling through a number of rows of barrels, and ultimately they'll come to a stop. So that's one of the issues that we have to deal with here. I think our right-of-way area that we have to work with is from where the sidewalk is, we have 5 feet back, and then it becomes private property. So we're trying not to encroach into that private property area. Obviously, we could also take a look at the street and seeing maybe there's some treatments that we can place in the street. Right now we're proposing striping through that triangular area that was shown in the diagram between the left turn lane and right turn lane. So that's also, it would be a short distance to try to create some type of device to absorb energy to get a vehicle to stop. But that's something that we'd have to look at and see if there is some type of device that can absorb energy in a short amount of space.
Thank you. There is a lot of energy there. You look at the pictures, and the vehicle strikes the curb. It lifts up off the ground, strikes the embankment, and then proceeds through a masonry wall before coming to a rest. So I think if engineering could come up with a way to divert that energy rather than oppose it, perhaps some type of railing with some barrels perhaps, so that if they hit the railing head on, it wouldn't pierce the traveling vehicle. In other words, encourage a speeding vehicle to have more of a glancing blow to the intersection than a head-on. Would that be something you would consider looking at?
Okay, is that, I think are you describing a vehicle as they approach that intersection? If they strike this object, it would deflect them more towards the turn into Big Sky?
Yes, the object would be in the median area, in the center, to where you either turn left to go into the parking or you turn right.
Okay, I think that's maybe something we can come up with. Re-engineer that area. We probably have to do some type of widening where the median is. Next, where you'd have to remove some of that median and create a wider section of road, create a left turn pocket into Wildwood Park, and then because of the widening, that's an area where maybe we can come up with a device or look at treatments to deflect cars instead of a straight line path into a left turn or right turn.
Well, something needs to be done just because the way it was originally laid out to have a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit and then come to an abrupt right turn. That was just poor engineering to begin with, don't you think, Mr. Machiko?
Well, I think there was plans previously for Sarboles to continue, and then ultimately I took a look at some street improvement plans, and it showed I don't know the history of it, but the decision was made to end Sarboles there and then create the track of homes that were right there. But obviously it is a challenge to try to direct cars from a straight line path into a turn here, where you have the way that's set up today.
Thank you. Yes.
So back on our idea of the barrows, could a median area? Because the way I've seen them a lot of times is that they've got steel cables, so the barrels are really just designed to slow the vehicle down safely. But I always thought the cables were there to kind of snag the vehicle and try to keep it from just continue to go. If you look at a median that could go there. Maybe I would suggest that you look at something like that versus just a wall, or, we see those, I don't know the terminology for them. I probably should. It's not a K-rail, but the concrete dividers that we see all the time. Those seem to move quite easily in an impact. But maybe you could tell us that when a car does impact it, what happens, and is that possibly feasible also? It might make more sense to try to create a barrier before that private property, since we have such a small area, so the vehicle, if it's spinning out of control or whatever, never gets to that point. We still need the signage, though, to make sure, that somebody that's not looking can't miss the fact that they're making a right turn. And, just one comment that you made about the speed limit there is it doesn't make any difference what the speed limit's posted. They're going to go whatever they feel they can go. So it could be 5 miles an hour and they'll go 60. So.
Is this working?
Yes.
I'd like to take a crack at this as well. So just some other things to throw out. We could consider a stop sign at that intersection. You could come down a street 45 miles per hour and come to a complete stop, turn left into the park, or turn right into the thing. Now, if you think about it in terms of a stop sign has advance warning. It can have advance warning stop stuff. There's, stop signs are, I know blind drunk is blind drunk, but there's certain things that people get used to, and one of them is what stop signs look like. Maybe sudden right turns at the end of a street are not something that people are typically used to seeing as they're driving down a street. Another possibility might be additional street lighting at the corner. This is a very dark intersection. There's one street light that's there. One of the challenges that I'm concerned about is you've got a relatively narrow median there, and we have to be careful that whatever we put in that median doesn't suddenly become somebody driving down Big Sky runs into some solid, it's a residential street. It's not a big wide street there. Runs into the side of a cable or a barrier or a rail of some sort in a place that they would absolutely not expect there to be one. The challenge with the barrels that Jim has stated is, again, you need that distance. What those barrels are, they're filled full of sand. The idea is a car hits the sand blows everywhere, and it slows down quickly, or slowly over 20 feet rather than over 5 feet. So it's just really kind of a challenging location, and we appreciate the ideas of the commission. We're really here to get your ideas, and also would love to hear some of the public comments as well. So anyway, we know it's not a simple solution. We're through some stuff up here, and we're definitely appreciating your input and your comments. So,
Thank you. I have one short comment yet. Can rumble strips be placed far enough away from the residences to not interfere with the well-being of the residences?
so one of the challenges we have at that location is right adjacent to the street are backyards and people's bedroom windows. That's one of the reasons that it's there's no street lights. So whatever we do is going to impact the neighborhood in some way or the other. It's a compromise. We're back to that darn compromise thing again. We always have to figure out, we're going to make some changes. Yes, rumble strips would absolutely be disruptive to the people whose backyards were adjacent to those. They'd be effective, but...
Well, is it possible to reduce the speed from 45 miles an hour to 25 miles an hour as you approach the residences?
A speed survey and make that segment a separate segment and reduce that speed limit as you approach. Again, speed limits are set by the speeds people are traveling. So theoretically, as you approach that end of that street, people are slowing down. I don't know how effective a 45 to a 35 to a 25 is going to necessarily be if they can't figure out they're supposed to turn right when they see a big sign that says
Understood.
turn right.
Now that you explained it, I understand that probably wasn't a good idea. How far away can rumble strips be placed from the residences?
Yeah, I think the homes that back up to Sarboles, they're right there. You could from Sarboles, you could see the backyards of these people's homes. You could see their windows. So I mean, any rumble strips that are placed on Sarboles, the residents will hear them as well, and some perhaps might feel the vibration. So that's very difficult to do without affecting the residents who live there.
To my recollection, the residences stop up the street, though. Am I correct? No, it's residences along the whole way. All right.
Should we hear public comment?
Oh, understood. I'm thinking if you could put. All right. Any
Yeah.
further discussion?
Yeah, I like the idea of the stop sign, I think, in the respect that rather than say, don't go through this sign here, that you just blew through a stop sign, gives you a lot more kind of distance to say, I've already screwed up. So I would be in support of doing that first and seeing what impact that has, rather than kind of do an overkill process. Because we could put plenty of warnings in that there's a stop sign there now, which then gives a pretty big safety margin. As I'm counting, that would probably be 40, 50 feet before they just keep going. So I like that. But now that would require a waiver and go to the council. Or is the traffic line of sight issues there and all that to justify it?
We would have to take that to council, but I'm sure with the circumstances we could make the right-of-way case. Again, we would like to clarify the right-of-way turning into the park anyway. So, but anyway, that is one option. And the advanced signage for stop signs is you can make that pretty severe. And then instead of that big yellow sign down at the end of the street, you would have all red triangles saying this is, you don't go past the stop sign, this is the end. So it's going to jump right out at you. It's nothing but red.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Well, it's hard to determine if we've actually reached a conclusion. Oh, thank you. We're ready for public comments on this situation. The first speaker will be David Dumas. but I may have skipped ahead here. Ms. Domingo, you must instruct everyone how this works, please.
Anyone wishing to address the Commission on this agenda item may do so by filling out a speaker card or a written statement card. Speakers are allowed 5 minutes. We currently have 7 speaker cards. The first speaker is David Dumas, and he has provided documents for the Commission to review.
Thank you. So I will call Mr. Dumas to the podium. Please state your name and city of residence for the record.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Commissioners, for allowing us to speak today.
Can we get his microphone on? Is it on? No? Okay. I want to hit this button. There we go. Thank you.
Okay. Are we good?
Now we're good.
There we go. Thank you very much, Commissioners and staff. My name is David Dumais. It's my wife, Cheryl. We live at 940 Bright Star Circle, obviously Thousand Oaks. I'm encouraged to hear the Commissioners' comments because some of the comments that you made today are exactly what we're proposing. I provided you and staff a copy of a little history. I was going to read a bunch of stuff, but you guys are kind of way ahead of me. So the documents that I provided this evening show a little bit of history of the corner. There's a picture from 2011 you can get off Google Maps that shows one little triangular sign at that intersection. Through the documents that Mr. Machiko provided, the accidents start going on in 2012. Today, there were, until I asked for these boulders to be removed, there were 2 boulders and chevron signs. So sometime between 2011 and 2016, the city took some mitigation measures for this corner. So something was going on prior to us. We've been here a little over 2 years, and unfortunately, we've experienced 3 accidents in 6 months. 2 of them have entered our property. 2 of them would have resulted in death or injury of anybody who was in our spa. I had a deputy stand right next to me and said, I wouldn't sit back here. It's dangerous. There's no way, no warning, no stops, no skid marks whatsoever. They came crashing through our wall. And I would encourage you to look at these photos and put yourself in my shoes. Vehicles leaving the road, poor engineering, and nothing to stop them but boulders and signs. If I can call your attention to probably the 4th page, West Sarboles, a Big Sky in 2012, there was a vehicle that's on its end, and it's in the wall, and it's in the tree. And I pointed out to the left of the vehicle is a boulder. 2 of the incidents that we happened to have at our place had that boulder pushing those cars up into our property. Somebody put those there. The owners didn't do it. You know, I could point fingers, but I'm not. I mean, that's something for the city to go look at. But somebody tried to take some mitigation measures. That didn't help. Commissioner Gregory's point about having the cars stopped is exactly what we have proposed later on in this presentation. In July, a young lady hit the wall. Drunk, no skid marks, no nothing. She hit the retaining wall. Probably wasn't going fast enough to do a whole lot of damage. She was taken away to jail. October 28th was the day that shook our safety, security in our home by this vehicle coming through our wall. Everybody keeps telling me this looks like an Indiana Jones ride. This is reality. This is what happened. I'm sorry I don't have a picture of the vehicle in the pool because it just wasn't a good shot. But again, the boulders pushed everything up like big ball bearings and pushed these vehicles into our yard. Again, anybody in the spa would have been killed. No doubt about it. No warning. And you can see the next photo of the damage. We still have a gaping hole in the wall put up with some board up. Then, who says lightning doesn't strike twice? You know, I'd reached out to the city on various occasions. I started out in July to get some information on how we can prevent vehicles from leaving the road. I got we can do some striping, you know. Thank you. And if I could get maybe another minute, I'd appreciate it. But, you know, we're talking about striping. Striping is not going to work. It's not going to work. We need to take some mitigation measures to keep vehicles off of the property. I get that there's a 5-foot easement, but keep the vehicles in the road where they belong. They belong in the road. That's what streets are designed for. Curbs. What I'm considering is median barrier protection. And if you want to scroll down because of time, the recommendation that I kind of put together has some type of median barrier infrastructure, cables, guardrails, however you want to describe it. That's up to the engineers to design, to capture and grab these vehicles so they don't go any farther west than Big Sky. Keep them in the street. Keep them off our property. Keep them off anybody's property. And carry it around the corner so they don't veer off into the living spaces. Jay Spurgeon, the Public Works Director, said to me, he goes, we got to be careful of the vehicles that go wide and end up in your house. So to some, and then to Mr. Finley's comment, and we talked about this when he came out to the house, there is some engineering that I put in the next page that has some infrastructure that would allow, if somebody were coming south on Big Sky, to be captured up in this particular K-rail in the last page. That's more like a styrofoam system that would be able to catch them. But again, I'm not an engineer. I'm just a guy with a couple ideas. Yeah, styrofoam. I said the same thing, sir. It'll capture a vehicle and it'll keep it in that area, rather than flip it off. But again, and if you look on Caltrans guardrail on the abutment, they'll actually have a capture system that has some give to it. Maybe not the sand barrels, but there's something that'll have a give if we have somebody that doesn't get speared on that street. I'm still looking at my so I'll go for the recommendations because I guess you can see I'm a little bit concerned about this. This is our house. This is where we live. This is the safety that we now can't have until this is taken care of. We would like the following recommendations. Install median barrier infrastructure in the intersection of West Sarboles and Big Sky to keep the vehicles on the road and off private property, to keep vehicles in the street. Won't have any land use issues, and it'll be increased safety for the intersection. Along those lines, we'd like to have no parking on Big Sky between Sarboles and Bright Star to accommodate the width of the infrastructure that now it's going to be required. We had an idea, and it may not fly, but maybe a solar powered light, farther up the street that would allow a warning that there is something coming up, kind of like your flashing yellows. And then finally, re-engineer Sarboles. It's a one mile stretch of road that has to cover a school, a crosswalk, a park, another crosswalk, residence, a sharp right turn, and park. Put that down to 35 miles an hour. And I would ask the engineers, how 1,500 cars a day, is that a large amount? I don't know. Okay, yeah, I don't know. That was in the staff report. That's how many vehicles, I guess, are been part of the traffic study.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Any questions?
Appreciate it. Any questions for the speaker? Do we have any questions for the speaker? No?
This would be for the speaker or for staff. Have any of the drivers that have gone through that wall not been intoxicated? Have we ever had a regular driver with full faculty go through that wall?
We did have one. It occurred a number of years ago. I think it was before somewhere in 2012. It happened during the daylight hours, and that police report said the driver was not driving under the influence.
So in recent history, this constant over and over again is more about an intoxicated driver as opposed to any one of us on here who might be driving in sober.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Mr. Bruce Dart, to be followed by Elena Lorenzo. Please state your name and address or city of residence for the record, please.
My name is Bruce Dart. My wife and I live at 786 Bright Star. I would guess maybe an eighth of a mile before that intersection. I've got several observations to make about that and some questions as well. I think I'd start by saying in terms of the both drunk drivers, and we obviously have an increasing issue with distracted drivers. I worked my way through college part of the time as a tow truck driver, and we had people drive through the endings of freeways where you had enormous flashing lights and barriers and fences and everything else, and they drove through them at 110 miles an hour and off the end of the freeway, and no skid marks, no nothing. So I would fully agree that with someone who's drunk, there's not really a lot you can do. Rumble strips don't work, none of that. They're going to do it. I think one of my questions in terms of barriers, Mr. Machiko, you commented about the K-rail that's there now not being anchored. While I certainly would love, in a perfect world, to protect everyone involved in a collision of that magnitude, the homeowners, obviously, the drivers, any pedestrians, people coming from on Big Sky. If you can't do a sophisticated defense in depth that you were talking about with the sand barriers, perhaps doing something that was a little more permanent, anchored in the concrete there, maybe taller, heavier. Nothing's perfect. If you're going fast enough, you can go through any barrier, obviously. But, and I don't know if there's a liability issue with the city if you design something that someone could claim later that it was designed to kill the driver of the car, but I'd rather stop the car and not have it continue onward. That's one observation. The other is the stop sign. As I understand it, we're talking about a stop sign on Sarboles into the parking lot of the park. And with the possibility that you raised, Mr. Finley, of making it a complete stop for people on Sarboles. I would also suggest that ought to also include a stop sign on Big Sky as well. The only reason that was a single vehicle accident was that at the times of those collisions with the building, there wasn't anybody coming on Big Sky. If someone had been on Big Sky and had been T-boned at 40 or 50 miles an hour, under those circumstances, probably the vehicle being struck broadside, those people probably would have been injured or killed as well. So safeguarding everybody at that intersection, I think, would be something that might well be something to be considered. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. Any questions from the commissioners? Mr. Lemmel?
Again, a question for staff, and I apologize for being late, so hopefully if any of this was covered already, just skip it. It'll be my responsibility to catch up. But in regards to daytime, really any time prior to darkness, is there a history of a lot of accidents in that area?
No, basically the collision history shows the repeated collisions at night, the 3 that occurred during the last calendar year, sundown.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Finley.
Yeah, just to add something to that, Commissioner Lemo, I do believe, though, that on, and I'll, for lack of a better term, I'll call it busy summer Saturdays, there's a lot of activity in and around the entrance to that park, and we do know that reportedly there's been some near misses or some concerns about the visibility as people,
Visibility in right of way?
Yeah, turning left into that parking lot, and with a lot of cars around and people around, it's kind of a busy intersection for those.
And a stop sign would positively impact that.
Yeah, it is what we would consider a right-of-way conflict a little bit.
Thank you.
Mr. Finley, one question, if I may. Would a yield sign be adequate as opposed to a stop sign?
On Sarboles?
On Sarboles?
Well, right now there's no sign. A yield sign is not as typical. Again, one of the things that I look at that intersection is you may want to put something in there that is a common, visible signage to get people's attention. Again, I know drunks are drunks, but a yield sign they don't see every day, just like they don't see this big turn right at the end of the street sign.
Well, this is for the left turn into the parking area.
Yeah. Yeah, that could be a yield sign. Right now, it is the right of way of those on Big Sky to make that turn. So yeah, a yield sign could work there.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Elena Lorenzo, to be followed by Janet Dart. If you please state your name and
Yes.
city of residence for the record.
My name is Elena Lorenzo, and I lived in 3196 Wild Horse. It's one parallel to Big Sky for almost 30 years. I have a lot of experience in that side of the neighborhood, and I use that corner usually to get in, to get out of my home and the neighborhood. I had trouble coming down Big Sky for all the people that go into the park, sunny weekends and stuff like that. They don't look anywhere. They see their spot there in the parking lot of the park, and they go. There's a double yellow line on the floor marked, and they just go through it. So it is very hard. I had many times had to brake, and I'm not speeding because it's only one block long that I have to drive, and it's I had to brake a lot of times. The other way out from that spot where I live is through the previous street into Sarboles, which is Frontier. There's some neighbors that live close by. The stop sign in Frontier, where people go to the stop sign, they don't look where the car is coming from the left. They just look through the right. I also had problems going down Sarboles that I had to brake there. I don't know. People are very distracted in that area. So my concern is just the people going into the park, that I was never involved in an accident, but I don't like it. So that's it. Yeah.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Lorenzo? Staff? Thank you. Janet Dart. To be followed by Neil, is it Cullen?
You got it.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Please state your name and city of residence.
Janet Dart. I live in Thousand Oaks, and my house backs up to Los Sarboles, right near Frontier, where she was talking about. We've lived here about 7 years. Thank you for holding this hearing. I think it's been really important. I have 4 points I'd like. I think I'm totally against that. We already have an arrow that says there's a right-hand turn lane ahead, and it's so far ahead of the turn that by the time you get up there, it's useless, and I don't think another one will help. And I'm one of these people that if I'm driving a mountain road and it says slow down to 45, I know I can take that corner at 50 or 55, depending on what car I'm driving. So if someone sees turn a 15-mile-an-hour turn up there, they probably think they can take it at 25. So I think that's useless. I am totally in favor of a stop sign, and I think that's probably a good idea on coming down Big Sky also. Because I know this little traffic study was done probably in October, but thank you for bringing up, Mr. Finley, what it's like on the weekend there. I don't drive that corner because I'm off of Frontier, but I walk it every single day. I'm walking my dog a couple of times a day. And I love it. There's a ton of people, but that entire street of Los Sarboles is distracted. I think it's ridiculous. I love driving 45 miles an hour, but you've got people... You go by a school, you've got a couple of park entrances. People they're going to a soccer game, they don't know where the turn is. They're slowing down looking for this driveway, and people are whipping around them because it's 45 miles an hour, and then they change their mind, they don't go on the driveway. So I know that people will drive what they drive, but I think if we could get that speed limit down to 35, it would help immensely. And then when they get to the end of the street, that sudden end won't be so strong. I also think that the lane split idea at the end is totally useless. I think it'll be actually more confusing because people are coming there on the weekend to go hiking. Before I lived there, I used to come there to go hiking, and you get to that corner and going, oh, there's Wildwood there. And by putting a lane, I mean, it's just going to confuse people. And you've got people with dogs and kids, and people are scraping mud off of their boots, and they're walking to their cars. And I think that just that lane is going to make it, it's not that much room to split. I think it's going to make it a lot worse, personally. Yeah, so that's my four things. I think that the right-hand turn arrow is useless. I think we should have a stop sign. I don't like the lane split, and I'd like the lower speed limit. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions of the speaker from commissioners? Thank you. Mr. Cullen? To be followed by, I hope I don't murder this, like Leishalt. Thank you.
Everybody does, don't worry.
Good evening, Commissioner.
Please state your name and city of residence.
My name is Neil Cullen, 980 Bright Star, Thousand Oaks. I've been there since the track was built, originally an owner. So for 30 years, I've seen a lot of going-ons down there. But a lot of going-ons has only been in the last 4 or 5 years. And I remember how the park used to be for all of us. Before the 30 years there, it was 5 other years in Wildwood. So that's 35 years. I've known Robert over there for all those 35 years. So anyway, I came here tonight originally for 2 reasons. One is for the safety of the residents at 940 Bright Star and their family. 2 is for the safety, let me look here, for the impaired drivers. We're all here tonight because of impaired drivers. We're not here because of our neighborhood, the way we drive in our neighborhood, us residents and stuff like that. We're here because of drunk drivers. And yes, there has been more accidents down at that corner than what is noted here in the staff report, okay, into that wall. People, there's been a lot of them that's been into the wall. Okay, first of all, they got a retaining wall there that's about 3 feet. Then they got the garden wall. So there has been accidents into the retaining wall, and people back out of there and leave. You can tell by the oleanders that were planted over there, they've been busted up many times. So they haven't been reported. The police haven't been there. So what we got here is a problem with impaired drivers. So that's the next reason I'm here. I don't think the problem is 45 miles an hour on Sarboles. I don't think the problem is need more signs. We all know what's happening down there. And it was brought up. I'm going to call him by his first name, Jim, our engineer there. I'm sorry, but your last name, sir?
Mashiko.
Okay. I've called in 2013, where their first DUI on record, I called and wanted to know after that why somebody put those boulders there. 3 large boulders in front of that retaining wall and the garden wall. Way before you lived there. I think you've only been there maybe 2 years. I called the city. There are launch ramps. That's all it is. I used to be on a safety committee for the phone company, GTE and Verizon, for 34 years. So I used to have to inspect the accidents that our drivers got into. And I knew that that was going to be a problem. But like I also said, Mr. Gregory here brought it to our attention that we don't want to put something there that's going to kill somebody. And that's what's going to happen to the next drunk driver. We also want to save your lives and anybody that's in your house. So anyway, it's a problem down there. And a lot of this is the Parks Department's problem. And the reason I say that is, let's back up a little bit. When that track was built 30 years ago, they were trying to put in 300 homes. That's why it looks like Sarboles was going to extend. Then all the people that lived in Wildwood got after that, and there was a petition, and the builder got it down to 50 homes. So what happened was, Sarboles, instead of going straight into the park, it's going straight into somebody's backyard. So all that, in my opinion, that island needs to come out or be removed, deter the traffic so it's heading towards the park instead of somebody's home. And or we talk about, can we put a picture, can we put a slide back up there if I give you a number, sir? The picture, I'm losing my train of thought here. Number 4? No, it's not number 4. I want to see the entrance to the park. So I believe it's number 3. Does that show us the entrance to the park? Well, everybody's talking about putting a stop sign down there for the entrance to the park. As you can see, the park has 2 entrances, one here and one here. And if we take this island and we make the only entrance right here on the eastern end, then the people are not coming up.
Can I interrupt, please? You need to have a microphone. No, you need to have a microphone so that we.
I get like this. Robert knows that. Okay. Okay. In my opinion, I'm going to try to slow down. In my opinion, we don't want people that are going to use the park to even come to the corner. They need to come here and drive into the park this way. This way, if they're going to leave the park entrance, exit. But when they exit here, everybody knows, all of us residents know, they go from here right over here, across the traffic. That's another possibility. So something has to happen here where there's no left turn. Our left turn is going to be down here, and right turn only out of the park. And it's all safety, and I think we're barking up the wrong tree. And to top it all off, and I'll stop, and my time is probably up, Parks Department needs to pave the parking lot. It's been over 30 years, and with them closing their parking lot all the time, somebody's going to get killed on Bright Star. I mean on Big Sky. And Bright Star. So instead, I'm going to say this, instead of them repaving their dog park where somebody goes with one dog and one car and one person, carloads of dogs, people, and horses and everything else come to Wildwood Park, and they need to do their paving there. And that's all I have to say. And I'm sorry if I get wound up, but I've been retired now for 6 years, and it's bringing back bad memories.
Thank you, Mr. Cullen. Mark?
Can I borrow the microphone again? I'll be using that, plus I need some
Absolutely.
maps there.
After Mark,
My name's Mark Leachock.
step to the podium, please.
Let's try to save time. Okay.
After Mark, we have Mr. Ron Peterson as next. Please state your name and city of residence for the record.
Okay, my name is Mark Leachock, live in Thousand Oaks. I'm one of the residents that backs onto Sarboles there also. Welcome to the neighborhood.
Beautiful German Shepherd.
Thank you. I was friends with the people that used to live in your home. And it was interesting I was just going through the list of the accidents. And there was one time, and it was just a coincidence, I was talking to one of the owners. And we were talking literally right here. The boulders were there at that point. And this was back in 2012, the second item on the list. And I mentioned, we were talking about, and I said, living there and all, and what about those boulders? Have they helped? And she's like, no, they really haven't helped. One, launch pad, totally agree. And two, that they've had so many accidents that they stopped reporting them because they were afraid their homeowner's insurance was going to go up. And what they did instead was, and I don't know if you could see this now, the corner of your property, all that they did was stacked up a bunch of rocks there because people kept hitting that corner. And so they stopped repairing the wall and just stacked up a bunch of rocks. Half an hour later, that incident occurred. The car went right through, right where we were standing. So it's not only cars that are going to be potentially hit. It's a bunch of hikers and a bunch of people that go to Wildwood. And like you said, I think probably more like 6-7 years ago, you could go to Wildwood on a weekend, and there'd be like 3 or 5 cars there on a Sunday. It was wonderful. But then the internet came along. Everyone discovered hiking. The waterfalls are a big feature. Now you got people coming from all over. The amount of traffic that now goes into that park and all these people from outside, they're not familiar with the territory. And in fact, another issue too, and I'm thinking with, there's a lot of good ideas here, but there's a lot of things to take into account, and it's just not focusing on this corner. But you got to take into the big picture too, where, yeah, you have a turn into here, and then coming out there is usually what they do. Right here, you got a lot of people that they come here, it's a double line, they don't know what to do. Lately with the rains, they close the gates, so what do they really do? They're starting to stack up on the sides here where you can see the cars parked. If you narrow down the lane like you're proposing, those people are going to end up hitting right there because the people, they park on that, right there on the corner, as well as all the way over here on the other side. There's no red striping. There's some no stop signs there, no parking. But Sheriff's Department, you guys have been out in force the last several weekends ticketing because all along here too. What you really need to do is start taking into account the whole impact that Costco, the Caneo open space, is also having on the neighborhood. Because another issue that has come up that we've recognized, because of the double yellow lines here, and you got a lot of people that are not familiar with the area, they use GPS. Well, the GPS directs them down Frontier, which is down here, turn on to Bright Star, so they're zooming down Bright Star now, my street, at 35, 45 miles an hour, coming to here, making a left, and then going here into the parking lot. So if you did put some kind of stop sign or some kind of turning lane or something here, you'd also be helping us out. Additional signs on the street here, not really a big fan of that. We love Wildwood. Part of it is the darkness there. You can see the skies, the stars and all. I drove down the street last night and counted. The number of reflective devices there now, numbers on this one median alone, and the new ones here, which they really do work, is now 15. You have 15 reflective devices on one street. It is literally sensory overload when everything else is pitch black. And on the previous street further down, there's an additional 8. You got pedestrian signs, you got a bunch of right-hand turn signs, which is also, if you do the lane split there, is going to contradict, because it's saying 50 miles an hour to make a right, but wait, you could also make a left into the park, so add more confusion. One idea to maybe slow the traffic down, because I've been there for 18 years, and I've talked to several neighbors in the neighborhood, and a lot of them, we've all called the city over the years. 45 miles an hour, too much. We tell them that it's a lot faster than what they're going. And I got to admit, with the study that was done, 1,500 cars, 48 miles an hour average. Keep in mind, that was done in October, November. That's a low season for us now. We have seasons. Because during the summer, this parking lot is jam-packed every day. They're not going 45. And they did the study right about here, where they put the strips down. 48 miles an hour average here, where people are already slowing down to make the left or to go make the right. So what are they doing further down the street? And yeah, we also do have a major problem with people coming down Big Sky, whipping around and going down. And I've almost been hit walking my dog there. And if you talk to a lot of other people who have walked there, same thing. We called up the city, and over the years we've asked, nothing can be done, 45, because this is what the book from Sacramento tells us we need to do. I don't get any other solution. So I'm glad that we're having this meeting. I really appreciate it. One idea, maybe down at Velarde, which is the next block down, there's a 4-way intersection. You got Arbalest going east and west. You have the parking lot for the tennis courts and for the park, and then you're making a left onto Velarde North or Velarde West. If you put a stop sign there, At least that would give you the advance warning to, hey, maybe slow down, that you can't just cruise off of Lynn that's doing 50 and then on to Sarboles that you're doing 45, and everyone's in a rush to get home. But at least that's a good breaking point where, hey, you got to slow down, and then they might give a little bit more heed to the actual speed limit going down the street here. How's that going so far? Everyone making sense so far? Yeah, and as far as reflective devices, there's a picture
Chair
that you
Reader,
have. What is that?
the speaker's time is up.
Oh, you know what? I have said enough. I appreciate it, and on to the next one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the commissioners? No, thank you. Mr. Ron Peterson?
Yes, I'm Ron Peterson, and I'm live on 956 Bright Star. I'm just up the street. And we've been there quite a few years now, 14 years or so? Anyway, I just feel for our neighbors. I just can't imagine how it must feel to be in your backyard and not feel safe. I mean, that's terrible. And I guess I'm a little concerned about we're very concerned about the drunk driver, but we're not concerned about our neighbors in this dangerous position. And to deflect cars into here where there's people too. The park is very well used. Deflect cars over here. People walk along here all the time with their dogs, children. And so I think we ought to be concerned about keeping the cars out of a place where they can kill people, whatever that takes. And if it takes a hard barrier and they may get killed hitting it, I have to make the decision. I want to save our neighbors. And as far as speed, I've been there a long time. I get woken up at night sometimes, occasionally, by car. I can hear them speeding along this road, along Sarboles. Just 2 days ago, my wife and I were walking along Sarboles, and I was down by the park, by the school. And my wife had walked a side street because I didn't walk as far as she did. I'm older, weaker. Anyway, zoom. Here comes a car down Sarboles towards this way, going towards the house. He was doing, I'm not kidding, 60 to 70 miles an hour. I know that. He was jamming it. He hit the end here, zipped around here. Well, a lot of people in the park too. And then proceeded to go the other way. Well, I run across the median to try to get the license. By that time, he turned on the street, and I couldn't see him. But this is not just occasionally. It happens a lot. There's speeding on there. Very, very dangerous. The big thing they could do is get that speed limit down. I certainly would recommend 35 miles an hour or lower even. That stop sign sound like maybe a good idea too. I think that might be a thing that would keep the from zooming up here so fast, because that's the problem. It's not the park people that are speeding so much. It's the racers and the drunk drivers. That's what we have to prevent from speeding. And then this park is, when we first moved in, yeah, like I said, there wasn't many people in the park. Now it's a zoo. Even when it's open here, they park way up on our street. They park down here, down at there. They're all over the place. But what's really dangerous is they park right on the curve here too, around the corner. And here, it's and they shouldn't be parking along here and along here. It's too dangerous. It's hard to see too. Anybody, any child or any dog or anything. So I'd recommend lowering the speed limit, minimizing the parking here, or not having parking along here or here, and maybe a stop sign down there. And I think that would help a lot for the neighborhood and for our neighbors and for for all the people using the park. Like I say, there's people in here all the time, it seems, walking and using this area. Very, very well-used area, and that's great. I think it's great because people like to use it. And so I'm not one to keep people away from the park, but I want to keep the racers and the drunk drivers under control. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Appreciate you coming tonight. Our last speaker is Mr. David Lake. Mr. Lake, if you state your name for the record and your city of residence.
I'm David Lake. I live in Thousand Oaks. I actually live in the second house from the intersection that backs up to Sarboles, 926 Bright Star. I really heard some good ideas here tonight. I think I agree with many of them. Definitely need a reduced speed of some sort. First, I want to say that there are really two issues that I think are in play here. The only thing that will stop a drunk driver is a physical barrier, a sizable physical barrier. It's not signage, flashing lights, rumble strips. None of that stuff is going to stop the drunk drivers. And I really feel for you. I heard and later witnessed the aftermath of a couple of the accidents at your house. I'm really sorry that you have to deal with that. And I also wanted to say that the issue that I deal with in my house is more of the general traffic safety issue around that intersection, and as particularly during the mayhem that ensues on every sunny weekend when people are coming down the street at 50, 60 miles per hour. There is further east on Sarboles some traffic calming that was, I guess, installed after a fatal accident that seems to be effective about maybe 3/4 of a mile east. From the last mile or so of Sarboles there's a slight downhill grade, and it's very smooth. Cars gather a lot of speed, and they commonly come down 50, 60 miles an hour past my bedroom window, which is really close to the dangerous intersection, and they often go whipping around the corner onto Big Sky at a very unsafe rate of speed. It's a corner that's heavily populated by pedestrians. Hikers are crossing every which way in that corner, so there's really no safe situation with the grade, the speed, and that number of pedestrians. I'm kind of surprised there hasn't been a tragic pedestrian accident there since I've lived there, which is just slightly over a year. I'm intrigued by the idea that this gentleman put forward of re-engineering the entrance to the park so that the cars enter the park are forced to enter the park.
Sir, if you step away from the podium, you'll need a microphone.
First of all, I want to say I'm a little bit concerned about a stop sign, just putting a stop sign on the corner. I think that may actually increase some of the noise and engines revving, people stopping and people stopping and starting. Is it working? Yeah. Okay. 1,500 people a day, 1,500 cars a day coming to a full stop and then revving their engines and so coming to a full stop and then taking a minute to look around and text their friend because they're at a stop sign, and this is what people do at stop signs, and then the people coming up behind them and honking, the things that happen with stop signs. I'm sure that traffic engineers are familiar with these things. I study them. I got a transportation planning degree from UCLA in their urban planning program. So I'm interested in this idea of maybe re-engineering so that there's a complete blockage here, which would eliminate a significant part of the drunk driver problem, and maybe a forced left turn into the parking area with an exit here that would lead out onto Sarboles or onto Big Sky. I think that's something that could be looked at. I'm not a fan of the stop sign unless you can show me that it's not going to diminish the rural nature of our environment. I'm not a big fan of the additional signage and the flashing lights and these sorts of things, because I think they do impact the rural ambiance that we all love about this neighborhood. There's just too much traffic here on certain times. This is a separate issue, but it's a real concern. There's a lot of distracted driving. People are whipping around the corner looking for parking. They're making sudden turns. There are kids that play in the street, and I'm really afraid for them, because I've seen some of these hikers who are people who are visiting the park, not quite sure where they are, and they don't seem to be focused on driving at all times. They seem to be focused on other things. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions of the speaker from commissioners? None? Thank you. This is on our agenda as an action item, but
Chair Reader, there's one more speaker.
oh, I'm sorry. A last-minute addition.
I'll be relatively quick. I think
Mr. Elias? Is it Mr. Elias?
Yes.
Is that what you said?
Robert Elias. I'm at 914 Bright Star Street, so my house sits third from the corner, the one here with the pool. And, you know, I think there were a lot of really great ideas proposed. You know, me personally, it's funny, I rode in with Dave today, so we might be kind of quiet on the ride home because some of our ideas differ a little bit. I'm not opposed to the stop sign. I think psychologically there's something very powerful about an international symbol that kind of just forces people to slow down well in advance. So I'm not opposed to that as a maybe kind of see what happens type of measure. As you could maybe imagine, I'm not crazy about having a left turn lane redesign here, taking out this olive tree, which has been here forever, being right behind our pool with my kids' rooms and everything right there, and people kind of slowing down and stopping in the middle of the street and all the things that go along with that. You know, we're all going to have kind of different issues with different proposals, but those were just kind of two items. And you know, this kind of goes without saying, but a lot of the issues that I've experienced, I've been in this house for 10 years, has been after hours, after 9 p.m., people drinking in the parking lot, people lighting out fireworks. You know, there's red flag warnings. There's a lot of issues that go along with, you know, certainly people that aren't necessarily going there to visit, but it's also a teenage hangout spot. So I would also propose that, you know, on the sign it said that park is closed at 9 p.m. I have a friend who's a ranger for the Santa Monica Mountains, and he was absolutely blown away when I told him that this park is not closed, that the parking lot is not closed at 9 p.m. every night, because every park in the Santa Monica Mountains is closed. So, you know, that would at least keep like the teenage drinking kind of party crew away from this area, which could also help with the safety issue. That's all I have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions of the speaker from commissioners? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Machiko, do you have any comments on speakers?
Yes, was taking some of the notes and would like to respond to some of the comments and questions that were brought up during the public presentation. First item was the amount of volume that's at this end of Sarboles. We had measured about 1,500 vehicles per day. That was taken in early November, and obviously, from our understanding, it's a low time of year, especially because of the park activity is much lower. I mean, we can always reevaluate and take account at a later date, but the 1,500 vehicles, that's two-way traffic, so roughly it's 750 people coming westbound and then 750 vehicles going eastbound. So if a stop sign is to be added here, basically 750 vehicles would have to come to a stop. With the stop sign option, you do have to consider unintended consequences. People who currently make a right turn without having to stop, if they don't like the idea of having to stop when they feel there's no conflict and they feel there's no reason to stop, they may take a new route. They may start entering at Frontier and then make a left turn into, I believe, Bright Star. So you may have traffic patterns in the neighborhood altered. So if that option is to be considered, we'd probably have to notify the entire neighborhood because there are potential ramifications on alternative routes that could develop. The 35 mile per hour option, reducing the speed limit from 45, that's something that's more challenging because, again, our speed limits throughout the entire city, they are set based on the California Vehicle Code. It's a state procedure to set the speed limits based on what motorists are driving along the street. We could look at different ways, maybe generally for this type of road, because it is a wide lane, there's a bike lane out there for westbound and eastbound traffic. One way to possibly lower the speed and get drivers to possibly drive slower, we could look at striping modifications, narrow the lane as they travel west, change the look of that road. But that's something that we'd have to look at later. Flashing yellow beacon was being proposed as you approach this intersection. That's something that could be considered, but at the same time, from our understanding that the ambient lighting from the glow of the light, that might impact people's view. That's something that we considered. So at this time, we didn't recommend that, but obviously other residents may want, who would be affected, who might see the glow of that light, we'd probably want to get them involved if that recommendation were to move forward. The issue of removing parked cars, that's a possibility. The issue with that is that if you do remove parking, sometimes when you have parked cars, that does cause traffic to drive slower. So if you do remove parking, you create a wider area for cars to make that right turn. That might, cause cars to drive faster around the turn, whereas when there's a car parked there, the car is going to probably drive slower. So from my understanding, there is concerns of speed at that location. So that's something to consider. Also, by removing parking there, the cars that are displaced that normally park there, that's just going to drive them deeper into the neighborhood. So if people don't like the idea of visitors parking in front of their homes, that's another thing that they're going to have to contend with. And I think those are, I believe, the main issues that that were brought out.
Thank you, Mr. Michiko. We'll open our conversation among the commissioners now. Mr. Lemmel?
Yes, I first would like to just ask staff a quick question, and that is, even though this is an action item, based upon our discussion, you could go back and study or review suggestions made tonight and come back at a future meeting, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, then I have a couple of things. First of all, I think this is a multi-tiered challenge, and I know everybody has different concerns, but my first level of concern, and I would say that, of the first 10 years I spent on the Traffic Commission, this is probably the issue that I've looked at the most and heard the most from people who happen to know that I'm on the commission. I have a marginal concern for anybody breaking the law that gets in trouble here. So whatever happens to them comes along with breaking the law. And driving intoxicated is clearly breaking the law. So when I say a multi-tiered problem, I want to look at that from the homeowner's perspective first. and all the other issues we've learned about tonight, which tend to be right-of-way issues for the most part and speed, are important issues, but they're secondary to what brought the problem to the public's attention and to the homeowner's attention. So it's my belief that the first thing you do is stop the car, because I agree with staff's reference that any warning signs you put up, any flashing lights you put up are only going to confuse them that it's a new bar to go to that just opened there in town with beautiful flashing lights. So there's no traffic mitigation in my mind that's going to work for an intoxicated driver. What does work is, especially when, the last person I think that crashed through told the officer, hey, I thought I was in Reseda. And I know how much this looks like Reseda, but still. So I'm of the belief that the boulders would have been a decent step if they would have been 8-foot tall or 6-foot tall boulders. So what I'd like to at least consider is some level of pylon that gets placed there, and again, without negatively impacting the neighborhood, make certain that landscape that is mature enough to completely cover the pylon goes there. And what you might want to do, not that anybody's going to pay attention to it, is let someone know that there is a dangerous traffic barrier ahead. Maybe it's 1,000 feet that a sign says that, to hopefully limit whatever liability we might be concerned about. So that would be my first step. The second step, I think stop signs always do a beautiful job of declaring right-of-way. They do have a negative impact on quality of life. You have to decide which is a worse negative impact on quality of life. The things that go along with the stop sign, or the things that go along without having one that declares right-of-way. I am a huge believer, and I don't have a lot of people that support me on this, but I'm a huge believer, as some of our commissions are, that maybe a way to solve that is some modified version of a traffic circle, because it not only declares right-of-way, but it instantly slows traffic. So you kill two birds with one stone. Printing the speed limit on the road or on the side of the road is going to do nothing. And I know you people aren't going to like this, but 90% of the people that are not going to pay attention to the speed limit are your neighbors. It's not people coming from out of the area. And that's been tested over and over and over again. So I would appreciate us taking a look at solving what I think is the biggest problem first, because we have gotten away with a lot of great luck. And what I mean by that is, it's a miracle somebody wasn't in the pool or wasn't in the spa when someone comes over with a car. I find that almost as hard to believe as that lady who thought she was in Reseda. So that's the first thing I want to do. Because if someone's intoxicated, their initial concern is not for their own life and limb. And they certainly don't care about the homeowners. So what I would love to see is if staff could go back with a couple of some of these suggestions, which might just be wild suggestions or might be, significantly cost prohibitive, is take, what a citizen thinks and put the professional point of view on it and let us know what you think. But I would hope that we do not come up with any particular decision tonight, because I think it's premature for us. But I would definitely put this at the top of our priority list. And with that, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lemo. Very, very good points, and I agree that we as commissioners probably aren't prepared to take a vote to instruct our council to take any action on this at this time. In addition to what Mr. Lemo mentioned, I would like to entertain the idea of creating an entrance to the parking area further to the east, opening up a space in the median so that there are left turns away from an area that is hard to see traffic coming. And Mr. Lemo, I think when you referred to the pylons, were these in the intersection as opposed to past the curb?
No, that's a very good question, and I should have been more clear. No, the boulders, from what I understand, are just outside your property, up against your garden wall. Is that right? So what I'm suggesting, as long as it has no visual impact, so it wouldn't go higher than the garden wall, is that they take place right there, and they're immediately covered. If you want, you move the boulders out to the street to make.
These aren't traffic control measures per the Caltrans manual. There's a manual for.
No, I understand. I'm not looking for a traffic control measure. That's not going to work with a drunk driver.
I need to interrupt. We can't speak.
But let me
speak with the audience.
Yeah, let me explain where I'm going with this. I'd like to see the pylons.
Okay.
The boulders are not on your are not on his property, correct? Yes, sir. Cliff, I'm sorry.
Boulders actually been removed.
Okay.
So they're not in the picture at this point in time.
Okay, then forget the boulders. Go to the pylons, heavily landscaped, all outside of the garden wall. Okay? So that they're there. There's no negative impact on the homeowner, and there's no negative impact on the community, because these are not designed to be pretty. They're designed to stop a vehicle, and they're close enough that a vehicle cannot get through it. So it looks to me that there might be needing 3 of them in that area. And, I'm not suggesting we plant oak trees, because there's other issues that come up with those. But a sturdy, 48-inch box tree that's and maybe vines or whatever covers it, I don't care. I'm only saying if you want to put a sign 1,000 feet up the road that says a barrier has been put in, whatever you would do, I don't know, you'd make the sign up whatever you'd like, but I just want something that is going to stop the car. They're going to be inconvenienced by the noise of a car crashing it, but that's a lot better than his spouse saying, I think you have to go get a car out of the pool. So that's my attitude there. I just want it to be a barrier.
Yes, thank you.
So I definitely agree with you, Commissioner Lemo, regarding creating a beefier barrier. The other thing that I would like to see coming from the city would be exploring the raised median with the infrastructure as recommended by the resident of 940 Bright Star, just to get a sense of what engineering would do if we should go down that route. I personally right now like the idea of exploring both of those options, because this has just been dangerously close, and I agree with what we've heard tonight from our other commissioners about a philosophy of safety first for those that are residents and secondary for the lawbreakers.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Gregory.
Thank you. Yeah, there are many ways we can approach this, but the one that I would like to take and direct everybody to focus on is one that creates a safe area without having to stop a drunk driver in the first place. Let's say if he gets to that spot, we've failed in finding a solution. I don't know yet if it's stop signs, because that's a little bit of an earlier warning. If somebody doesn't generally blow through a stop sign, that'll do it. I don't know if it'll just be larger signage in addition to stop signs. That would do it. As staff has said, if we go the stop sign route, we may have to notice the other neighborhoods before we can actually get that passed through to the city council. I would encourage possibly looking at, as Commissioner Lemo said, some type of modified traffic circle. If it would actually fit into that area, it would solve all problems. It would slow down the traffic. It would create a right-of-way. It would also create a barrier, because most of those have like a tree or something like that planted on them. So if they hop over that, they generally run into a tree, which is pretty much stops people. I would like to, task you with seeing if that's feasible in this spot. I know there are a lot of restrictions, so far as the area, and we can't encroach on anything, and the measurements have to, but if something like that would be possible, what I would be willing to do, besides just say, we're going to come back and study this any and all, is to, since we currently do have the barrier there, is to improve the signage immediately. And I think you can do that without having to go anyplace else. And then come back and make these additional recommendations as soon as possible. Is that possible?
Thank you. Any
yes.
further discussion? Mr. Lemmel?
Yeah, just first of all, I think the points that the town commissioner brought up were very, very good. I'd like to ask one other thing to just take a look at. I don't know what the cost involved is, but if that garden wall were to be replaced without a traditional garden wall, but with one that's got significant rebar on the inside and whatever, because it is the last resort. If that last resort is made, that doesn't mean it's not going to crumble every time a car hits it. It just means that a car is not going to go past it. The other question that I would like you to look at, I don't know how long it would take you to look at this one, is it would seem to me that the area to the west, where just a little above where it says Wildwood Park, that's park area, correct? If there would be some kind of easement arrangement that could be done with the park, if you needed to use that as part of the creation of a traffic circle or the right distance. I understand what you're saying, but if, again, it might be a phone call, it could be, I don't want you to spend a lot of staff time on it because it's not our land.
So we will take these suggestions and go back and see what everything's on the table here. So we'll go back and see what, from a geometry standpoint, what makes sense. And based on our preliminary review, I would say it's going to be a combination of things that's going to lead us to the best possible solution. So you've given us some good direction. We appreciate it. And if there's any more, anything else, throw it out there. We're going to go back and work on it.
Would you have significant time, staff have significant time, so that this could be a priority on our next meeting's agenda? That I know that's not a lot of time, but does that work, or would you like us to be more realistic than that?
We will work diligently. We have been working diligently on this, and we will initiate maybe some of the additional signage that we're talking about. One question that I'm kind of left with is if we leave this as a right turn as it currently exists. In other words, the traffic somehow, well, if you do a traffic circle, maybe this changes. There's going to be lots of additional signage that occurs. If you put a traffic circle in there, it's going to be filled full of signs. If we don't put a traffic circle in there, and we leave it without a stop sign, we're going to need that free right turn. You're going to need the dead end sign. You're going to need a lot of what's there. What I heard loud and clear is that you want us to look at a better barrier, a barrier that will stop a vehicle. And I would also say that a vehicle traveling, we can design a barrier that's going to stop the average car traveling at 45 miles per hour. What we really want to do is be that first line of defense. We want to really slow that vehicle down so that maybe if it hits that little retaining wall next, that's the end of the road for that vehicle. What we've realized is that first retaining wall and the garden wall has been the one that's taking the brunt of the force here. We need to take that brunt, I think, up front. And we understand that. Whether we can stop it dead in its tracks or whether it rolls past us a little ways but doesn't go very much farther, that's probably the best solution that we can come up with. So let us bring some ideas back. We'll look at the traffic circle again. The geometry there is a little bit tough, but we'll see what we can come up with. We'll go back and work on it. We'll plan on bringing it back next meeting.
Yes, Mr. Gregory.
If a circle won't work, I can also send you stuff on creating choke points, that work very much. I mean, people have to slow down to narrow. They have to literally slow down to 50 miles an hour to circumnavigate those things also. So possibly that. I'll throw that in there as a possibility.
I like that idea too. Ms. Simpson.
And as a secondary issue for improving the traffic pattern, can we collaborate with CRPD to just explore the options of improving the entrance and exit of that park and streamlining the cars with intention to make things better for the quality of life of the community?
We will include that as well. We'll include those discussions.
Any other comments from the commissioners? Good. Can I entertain a motion from the commission that reflects Mr. Finley's comments and the fine comments that were made here by the commissioners?
I'll make
Mr. Lemmel.
I'll make the motion that just says that, as Mr. Finley and staff have said, that take our suggestions, go back and review them, and come back with a few more solid recommendations based upon the concerns we raised and the speakers raised tonight, and that take place, if at all possible, at our very next meeting.
Thank you. Do we have a second for that? Yes. Thank you. Ms. Zambrano, we take a vote.
All those in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming to the meeting tonight. Appreciate it. The next item on our meeting is the status.
You're not leaving, are you? No, we'll be done by midnight.
The next item is the status report of prior traffic commission recommendations. We voted to change our meeting time from 6:30 to 6. Oh, I'm sorry. God, dang. I got to improve my nutrition. I don't know. All right. Our next item is the engineer's report.
Okay, yes, this is
on the Waverly Heights neighborhood traffic. This is an information item given by Mr. Mashiko.
Yes, thank you, Chair Reader. This is just real brief. Just wanted to include some information that we had just last month, early December. As you recall, we had a number of Waverly Heights residents come to the Traffic Commission, voicing some concerns over the neighborhood traffic issues that were going on within the neighborhood. And we just wanted to let you see a summary of the PowerPoint that was presented that evening by our staff, as well as we had representatives from the Parks Department as well as the school district at that meeting. So if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Mr. Gregory.
I appreciate this report because, we really do need to find a solution. And I'm glad to see from this that everybody's talking. And there were a couple recommendations that came through this that kind of, jumped out at me, knowing the whole situation there. And knowing that we can't control part of it. Big unanswered question is, the volume is already too large to travel through that neighborhood. That school location, I don't even understand why it was ever placed there unless, it was only for local kids that were walking there, because it was never designed to have a lot of traffic, go and drop off. It appeared to me that there really is only one solution that will make everybody happy, and it was in your report. And if I had any questions, it would be kind of what the status is, and that is we really need to shut down Old Farm Road, and a new entry, that goes through the park area and or, that rear area needs to go to Las Flores. That's just too much traffic to go through a neighborhood. I don't see us ever solving this problem with even the current traffic level and the projected new traffic level. We could throw a speed hump every 10 feet but that isn't going to stop all the cars that need to go to and fro this thing, because it's obviously, a profit center for the school district. And, I don't think that they should give up any of their, income doing it. The school's there. It's viable. Shutting that access path solves all the traffic problems we've been discussing up to date. Then my real question is okay, how do we get a right-of-way to put in a road? And I see 3 routes. I studied Google Earth today, and, there's 3 logical routes. It's not much. The northern route out of the back parking lot, it affects about 4 or 5 homes. I wouldn't want to be those homes. It's not going to be that noisy. It's just cars going to and fro. There's a southern route that comes right out where the ball field is, right where home base. That's kind of narrow, and it only really affects 1 home. And then there's a path that would be more or less kind of like an S that would come from about mid-path, to the back of the home field wall, because there is a wall and a barrier, so anybody playing ball there, it doesn't affect them. That would follow the contours kind of as an S, and then come out, and there's actually already a natural dirt road that comes next to the community garden that's right there, and it circumvents and really doesn't, impact the dog park or impact the community garden much, because it doesn't look like there's much, traffic there. Who owns all that land right there? I mean, is this possible that we could facilitate everybody saying, school board, if you can have as many people as you want there, but you need to get an easement here so we can put in a road for you, because the school really just cannot have traffic passing through a neighborhood like it is. There's nothing that I can see that we could ever engineer to stop the inconvenience that's currently going on, or the inconvenience that is, even going to grow to larger proportion. So where does that stand right now so far as looking into the
Well, that's something that was discussed at the meeting that evening, and the area or that access road that you were talking about, I think it would come from Flores, that would cut through where the dog park area is and sort of meander through. That's something that the Parks Department said if they were to entertain that idea, they would have to open up their master plan and get all the users involved and determine, how they feel about it, because that's obviously an option that would be well liked by the residents, but they have to look at who would else be impacted, and those would be the users of those particular areas within that park.
But our responsibility is to the people that pay their taxes in that area, correct? I mean, we're trying to create their safety and their quality of life. The school has their own needs. That's a property. They should be able to do whatever they want with it. We're just kind of saying, well, you're negatively impacting these people over here that we, honestly, if anybody can come up with a solution that would solve 3,300 car trips a day and all the problems that we have there, I don't see it. Okay. I could see slowing it down to a crawl if we stick enough humps in the way, but, that based on the projections and what the school district, I think, would like to do, would even grow that school even more, that it's only logical when you really look at a map, it impacts no one, having an access road that comes from Flores to that. So it's a win-win-win all the way around, as long as everybody will cooperate and that street can go in. I would seriously entertain putting the pressure on the school district to say, talk to the park district and incentivize them to allow us to do that, because we're trying to take care of our citizens here. We don't have anything to do with what they do with their schools. Unfortunately, we have no control over them or really the park system other than ask nicely. But the school district, I think, really needs to take the lead on that, incentivize the park somehow to make that happen, so they've got a resource there. They can pretty much do whatever they want as long as that access road's off of Las Flores, when you see it, it empties into a no neighborhood area. And all they need to do then is just go up to Herbs, then take Sarboles and hit the freeway right there. And problem solved. Okay, that's it.
We did talk about that. There's basically the type of traffic within the Waverly Heights neighborhood basically come down to the residents, the people who go to and from the school, and then there's also this component of shortcut traffic coming from Flores down to Jan's, and then that shortcut component, that's something that the city might have some level of control, and we brought up the idea of possible road closure options to the residents. That's something that they would have to petition the neighborhood to see whether or not the neighborhood would support that idea, because the residents within that neighborhood would be affected depending on where the sort of the barriers would be located, because their ingress, egress to and from the neighborhood would be altered. So that's something that we provided them petition forms if they wanted to choose to go that route. And if they needed additional help, we'd work with them. And if they did turn in a petition to the city, we'd bring that item back to the Traffic Commission.
All right. Can you keep us informed about the park cooperation and what's going on there? Because we've been given a task that I don't think our bag of tools can ever solve without finding this out of the box solution, which when you really look at the school and where it's located, it can't have that kind of traffic flow through a neighborhood. It's just not feasible. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Simpson, what are your thoughts?
Well, so I love how our Traffic Commission has done such a great job in taking the lead on this scenario for the Waverly Heights residents, and I know they're very grateful. I would hate to see this work and the pre-work going into these options just, kind of fizzling out. So what I would like to see is our continued leadership as the Traffic Commission in promoting a solution that's long-lasting and viable, and really working with CRPD and the school district to push this along, because we have the energy to get it done. And if there is a way that we could put together an agenda for the next round of meetings to take place with the representatives from the CVUSD as well as CRPD to push that exploration of the master plan and have an updated report for our next meeting as well. Because right now we have momentum, and it could make a huge difference to so many people, and it's been a struggle that's been on the table for these residents for so many years. It would be really nice if our team could solve this problem.
Any comments, Mr. Machiko?
Yeah, we'll look into that and bring the information back.
Thank you. Mr. Lemo?
Thank you. I think that staff's done a beautiful job already. I am virtually in total agreement with Commissioner Gregory in that, having also been to classes there, it's you can put all the speed bumps in you want. When you're going there before a class, you're not traveling at probably much more than 5 to 10 miles an hour anyway. It's more about volume. And so my opinion would be if we were to give staff any kind of direction, it would be do what you think is best to solve the problem, but maybe our lead really is that unused area which could become a road. I don't know what the cost is involved, but there seems to be no negative impacts. And I'm not going to take your time and repeat all of what Commissioner Gregory said, because I think he hit the nail right on the head. There's a minimal amount of impacts. It would be a public relations success for our friends at the school district, because it has no negative impact on students either that are going to go there. If there is some minor inconvenience to what you have to do in regards to the cut-through traffic for the neighbors, I think they're going to be more apt to be open to that when you've solved the volume problem coming from the school. So I think staff working with the CRPD and the school district can let them know, as you have already, that this is a priority, but see what we come up with. I mean, it seems so doable, but you're in the front lines, and we're just taking a 30,000-foot view. So, but thank you for the work you've done. I think it's great.
Any further discussion by the commissioners? I have myself nothing to add. I think my fellow commissioners have done a commendable job in relaying the thoughts of this commission. Now we are ready to go to item 7.
There you go.
This is the status report of prior traffic commission recommendations. I'm pleased to report that our recommendation to the commission was approved to change our meeting time from 6:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. Is that correct, Mr. Machiko?
Yeah, that's correct. Actually, I think you said 6:30 a.m. It's 6:30 p.m. to 6 p.m.
I don't know what's wrong with me tonight. All right, next item, commission referrals from last November. There are none. Work program and commission schedule. Any questions for staff? Yes, Mr. Lummel.
I have one question to staff, and I do not expect an answer because I should be asking the question from over there and not over here because it's too close to the home in the neighborhood that I live in. But what would be the process if there is something that starts well outside of 500 feet from my home, but passes in front of my home, and it is a serious speed concern? I've had literally a dozen people in the neighborhood come to me during the holidays and say, we really need to address it. I've been out there from 5:30 in the morning till 6:45 counting cars that are clearly in excess of 25 to 30 miles an hour. What is the proper procedure for a commissioner not to take care of something that is self-serving?
Well, typically, we can investigate an item, I guess, as a private individual, or if you wanted to direct those individuals to us, we can look at those equally.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Gregory.
Yeah, just real quick, I see Green Meadow Drive south of Lynn, traffic calming. That's coming up next meeting or so, or I see future information.
I think that should be probably spring of this year.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Will do. Thanks.
Ms. Simpson. This has been a long meeting. I'll make this quick. I have a subject that I'd like to present to my fellow commissioners. It's regarding the Neighborhood Speed Awareness Program that our council put together to have petitioners for speed cushions go through prior to doing petitions for the speed humps. The wording that the City Council made is that the lead petitioner shall be encouraged to demonstrate the completion of the city's neighborhood speed awareness program prior to submitting a petition. And this program is provided free of charge by the city. How do my fellow commissioners feel that we recommend to the council that we substitute the word encourage to take it to mandate that they take it prior to approaching staff to study a situation? Do I have any thoughts on that? Mr. Lemmel?
Well, it's one of those things where it's very difficult to mandate common sense. And I wonder if it almost feels like look, they're going to need to know what's in that class anyway, because those are rules they're going to have to follow. So if they don't do it, I have a very difficult time, to be honest, correcting council when the difference is electeds versus appointeds. And I think it is common sense that if I was in a neighborhood, I would want to take that class, but I don't think you can mandate common sense. That's just my own opinion.
All right, thank you. Any other comments on that? All right. Oh,
I'll just make a quick one, and that is, Yeah, I don't think you can make anybody do anything. I don't know if council would change that, to be honest. I mean,
all right.
There just may not be anybody feasible to do it. So, although it's not, I'm not saying it's not a good idea, and I'd like to see it. I just don't think it will move forward, to be honest. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for your opinion. So that will not be discussed further. One short second item is the function of our commission. We often deal with problems that develop in traffic situations in our community and try to come up with solutions. But another function of our commission is to present new ideas to the community as far as different ways to manage our traffic and transportation systems, and make recommendations to staff to study certain situations. Just the flashing yellow arrows are an example of that, where the commission actually approached staff to see the feasibility of doing something like this. I asked again my fellow commissioners if they would be interested in exploring some of the things that other cities are doing to manage their particular traffic situations, and bring the ideas up in future meetings that we may request staff to consider. Do I have any comments on that? Yes.
I think it's a great idea, and I've actually done that. So I just on a personal note, to provide them some information. Since I'm exposed to two communities, and my southern community has a lot of geographical challenges for traffic, I get to see some applications for some traffic calming measures that aren't as needed here as they are because of the terrain and whatnot. I'm referring to the communities of Oceanside and Carlsbad and whatnot. And I run into things all the time that I thought, oh, wow, we might have an application for that. But it takes a specific need. And as engineering people will always tell you, it has to be able to be engineered. So I think it's a great idea. I think they'd probably appreciate us bringing new things, to solve old problems if possible, just from the standpoint of that if we see them working in another community with a similar problem, at the very least, it just points that you could pick up the phone, call them, and say, hey, how's that working for you? We're thinking about doing it, in our area. I know you probably already do that in our county. But if you don't have any objection, to us passing information on, we'd be happy probably to provide it.
Thank you. Any other comments? Are we in agreement then that this should be pursued? That where we make it possible
just
for
ask
ourselves
staff
to
if they have any
bring
problem
these
with
things
it.
up?
Yeah, I don't know if it needs to be formally pursued. I think that's probably our responsibility as we go about. I technically serve in capacities in 3 other communities, and one is a city and one is just an area of Pacific Palisades, and so we're exposed to different things all the time. I don't know if there's anything formal to do other than I think it's certainly, as you stated, a good responsibility of our commissioners to keep our eyes and ears open, and I'm sure staff does that based upon what they hear as well. I don't know if there's anything formal we can really do to move that forward.
All right, thank you. Ms. Simpson, any comments from you? No? Well, in light of that, then I would like to suggest to staff to send to us commissioners 2 articles that we might read, and then maybe at some time in the future discuss certain ideas that these would bring up. One is Hans Monderman in Holland and how they manage traffic. It definitely wouldn't work here, but it's very, very interesting to see what he has done. The second would be a traffic engineer in West Palm Beach, Florida, who has designed a traffic solution similar to what we may be experiencing on Thousand Oaks Boulevard as our boulevard is renovated and goes through planning and such. So with the permission of the commissioners, I'd like to request that in the future that you receive these articles so that you could peruse them. Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Any other comments or discussions for tonight? No? Well, it's time to adjourn then. The Traffic and Transportation Advisory Commission is now adjourned until 6 p.m. on February 15th, 2017, in the boardroom of the Civic Arts Plaza on the 3rd floor. Thank you.